Hi everybody. In this video we're going to talk about the endocrine system, and it's a real brief exposure to the endocrine system. I just want to give you a basic understanding of what it is and a couple of the enzymes that, hormones that are important. There's lots of important hormones. We just don't have time to do them all, so I just thought we'd do a couple in this unit. The first thing you want to do is look at well, I guess we want to do what is the endocrine system in general, and it's responsible for chemical signals called hormones. And one of the things we're going to talk about in this unit is how the endocrine system and the nervous system are both very critical for the communication of from one part of the body to another, and for maintaining homeostasis. And so, and they do it in different ways, and we'll talk about that. First, let's look at all the glands and organs associated with the endocrine system. And one of them you might hear called the master gland, and that's in the brain. It's kind of the geographical center of your skull, so you can't really touch it, or get close to it because it's way down in the center. But this gland called the pituitary gland is attached to the part of the brain called the hypothalamus that we mentioned, and it makes a whole bunch of different hormones that if you took a more advanced class, you would learn all those hormones and their major functions. The next one is the thyroid, and the thyroid's located right inferior to your larynx, and it lies on the trachea. And then behind the thyroid, if you were to look from the back side, there's actually four glands called the parathyroid glands, and on the underside of the thyroid gland. Another gland of the endocrine system is the thymus gland, and the thymus is one that you would easily see dissecting a fetal pig, because the thymus is involved in kind of helping create T cells, part of some of our white blood cells. And what happens is you make a lot of those when you're younger, and then the thymus kind of shrinks after you've made a whole bunch of them, and your thymus is going to be much smaller in an older individual. So one of the best places to see it is when you're dissecting a fetal pig, because the thymus kind of lays on top of the heart here, and it looks quite large in a fetal pig, but it's going to look quite small in a pig or a human that's older. The adrenal glands, most of us know about adrenaline in our adrenal glands, but a lot of people don't realize that they're located on the superior side of each of our kidneys. So we have two adrenal glands, and they're located right here on top of the kidneys. The pancreas is underneath your stomach. So again, if you're going to dissect something like the fetal pig that we'll see in the virtual lab, you actually have to kind of flip up the stomach of the pig, and the pancreas, it's kind of a little bit more on the left side than the right side. You'll see a little bit more of the pancreas there, but kind of extends further on that side. But notice that it looks really kind of bumpy, and the adrenal glands kind of look the same way. But the pancreas being bigger, it's really easy to pick it out because you can see that bumpiness under that, an elongated organ under the stomach. And then finally, there's the ovaries and the testes, and our gonads, the reproductive glands. And the one thing I just wanted to mention about those, we're going to look at those when we talk about reproduction. But I remember having a sonogram when I was pregnant, and I didn't want to know if it was going to be a boy or a girl. And the technician kind of put the tool, whatever it is, the thing that they're looking at through your stomach, and in the area of where the baby's ovaries would be, which would be kind of down here. And I actually, because I know a little bit about anatomy, I was like, oh no, I saw ovaries. It's going to be a girl. And I didn't tell anybody. I was like, no, I didn't want to know if it was going to be a girl or boy. And now I know it's going to be a girl because I saw ovaries. And And then after a little while thinking about that, I went, wait a minute. When the baby's developing, or when any of us are developing, our males developing, the testes are actually in the same place as the ovaries, and they will descend as that fetus develops. So I thought about it. I was like, oh, wait a minute. The testes would be in the same place as the ovaries. So I realized that I hadn't seen ovaries, and it turned out that was true because I ended up having a boy. So make sure you know where those endocrine glands are, and you can label them. And just to clarify some vocabulary here, we have glands that are exocrine glands and glands that are endocrine glands. And so the endocrine system obviously is made up of these endocrine glands. And what we mean by an exocrine gland is it's a gland that has a duct. That means it has a little tube that secretes whatever it makes onto a surface. And and so things like sweat glands that are in your skin and have a little tube and secrete sweat onto the surface of your skin, or oil glands, these are exocrine glands. Whereas endocrine glands are going to secrete, it can secrete kind of from the whole gland into your cardiovascular system, into your bloodstream. You can have exocrine glands inside your body, but they just have to have a duct, a tube to secrete onto a surface. And I'll give you an example of one of those. Comparing the endocrine and the nervous systems, what we have, so the nervous system helps the body communicate through axons, through neurons. And so remember, the impulse goes down the axon, and it can stimulate a muscle or a gland. And and so it's going to be a very rapid communication. If you pinch yourself, these are neurons that are going to send information instantly to signal to your brain that, ow, that hurts. Or if you need to get up and move very quickly. These are going to be functions by the nervous system because they're very fast and they're carried out by the nervous system, particularly by neurons. Whereas in the endocrine system, we have communication throughout the body, but it's much slower because what's happening is a gland is going to secrete a chemical, a hormone, into the blood, and it's going to spread through the body, and different cells are going to respond to that hormone, and so it's going to be um, a, a slower response to the secretion of that hormone. It's not going to be fast like the nervous system. But the advantage of that is it also lasts longer. So it allows you to kind of help your body maintain homeostasis over time and by hormones being secreted. So hormones will kind of stay in your blood longer and give you a longer lasting effect than the nervous system, which gives these kind of rapid impulses. But together, they're both critical for the maintenance of homeostasis. Um, let's see, I thought there was something in here I wanted to mention. Oh, this one down here is talking about how the nervous system and the endocrine system can control blood pressure. And there's neurons that can respond instantly and constrict blood vessels or dilate blood vessels, and that can change the pressure of your blood. But we also have hormones that change the blood volume and change the amount of glucose uptake and different things that can also affect the cardiovascular system and the blood pressure. There's a lot of details here about how hormones work, and we just don't have I don't have the time to do all that. But there's all sorts of good stuff that I'm sure, again, if you take a more advanced class, you'll learn more about that. I'm not going to talk about the hypothalamus, but I did want to talk about a little bit about the thyroid. And we already mentioned that the thyroid gland is located on the trachea, just below the larynx, and and we had the parathyroids around the back. Now, one of the things I wanted you to know is what hormones are produced by the thyroid gland. And the ones I want you to know the best are these two hormones that are called, we're going to call them T3 and T4. But if you look at their name, triiodothyronine and thyroxine. Iodo, oh, that sounds like iodine. triiodothyronine and thyroxine. If you can recognize T3 and T4 are thyroid hormones, that's good enough for me. So when you hear about somebody talking about, oh, I have my thyroid's low or my thyroid hormones are low, usually they're talking about T3 and T4. And I'm just going to lump them together because you'd have to really understand their functions quite well to understand the difference between them. But together they're involved in speeding up the metabolism. Now, these hormones only function when they have iodine. And so that's why it's called triiodothyronine. So it has T3 means it has 3 iodine atoms in it, and a molecule of thyroxine has 4 atoms of iodine in it. And so we get our iodine from our diet. Typically we get it from salt. We iodize our salt, so we get enough iodine. So if you don't get enough iodine, your thyroid, you're not going to make enough T3, T4, and it's going to affect your metabolism. So when you hear about somebody talking about they have a fast metabolism or slow metabolism, well, you could have a slow metabolism because you have a dietary deficiency in iodine. Fortunately, in the US, that doesn't happen. Around the world, it doesn't happen as much as it used to. Another reason why you don't make T3, T4 could be due to another hormonal problem, but and sometimes babies are born without adequate T3, T4. So not only do T3, T4 speed up our metabolism, but it actually speeds it to the point that without, a good sufficient level of these, it actually has severe health problems. And so here they have when a baby's born with very low thyroid hormone, it actually would cause, if it's not treated, it can cause severe mental incapacitation. So this would be a very serious condition. And because of that, all babies that are born in a hospital are checked for their T3, T4 concentrations like the day they're born. Let's see. There's another hormone involved that the thyroid produces, and that's called calcitonin. And calcitonin is involved in calcium balance, but it's a little, again, beyond the scope of what we're going to talk about today. Let's skip on to that. It said in section 16.3, you should be able to answer this first question. So I skipped the calcium part. Okay, let's look at the adrenal glands in section 16.4. And the adrenal glands, like I told you, they're found on the top of each kidney. And if you look at the adrenal glands and you look at the anatomy of them, here they cut one open and they're showing you that there's an outer layer and an inner layer. And they actually kind of act like two different endocrine glands. Now, I'm not going to go into that, which is why a lot of this isn't highlighted, because I didn't want you to have to know all the details of that. But what I do want you to know is where the adrenal glands are, and that they make a few important hormones. And here's a pair of hormones, epinephrine and norepinephrine. And again, just like when I talked about T3, T4, these hormones are similar, and I'm not going to go into the details about how they function, but together, again, you've heard of adrenaline, and we all know what it feels like to get a shot of adrenaline. Another term, a more commonly used term for that now is epinephrine. So epinephrine or adrenaline is that hormone that allows you to act in emergency situations. So these two hormones work together, adrenaline and noradrenaline, or the same thing as epinephrine and norepinephrine. Okay, and so they're the hormones that give you that, remember, that give you that really fast fight or flight response. And I've been hearing that more called fight or flight or freeze, because there's some people in some animals that just, their instinct is to freeze when they get that epinephrine shot. But they're a short-term response to stress, and they're produced by those adrenal glands. There's another hormone that's really important that's produced by the adrenal glands called cortisol. So one of the things that adrenaline or epinephrine does is it raises your blood glucose. And cortisol is another hormone that raises our blood glucose, and it's produced by the adrenal glands. And this is also one of those that is involved in the stress response. No. So cortisol is also involved in raising the blood glucose, and it does some other things too. One of the things it's involved with is it reduces inflammation, and when you get an injury, it can help reduce the inflammation. And as a result, we use synthetic cortisol in we might use like a cortisone cream to reduce inflammation. If you get a bug bite or something, you might put cortisone on there. If you have an autoimmune disease that's the inflammation is causing you major problems, you might take steroids. You might take cortisol to reduce that. So it's not only an important hormone, but it can be used in a clinical way. And then the last hormone produced by the adrenal glands I wanted you to know about is aldosterone. And it's really important for the balance of sodium and potassium. So it works with the kidneys to release or retain sodium and potassium. And sodium potassium balance is absolutely critical for normal muscle function, normal function of our neurons. So it's a really important hormone. That squeaking is my dog squeaking a ball. Anyway, okay. So I think that's what I'm going to talk about with the adrenal glands. And then the last gland I wanted to talk about was the pancreas. And the pancreas is, like I said, it's underneath the stomach. And an interesting thing about the pancreas is it acts as both an endocrine and an exocrine gland. So you might remember that we mentioned the pancreas when we talked about the digestive system, because we said the pancreas, there's a tube from the pancreas that secretes some base into the small intestine to help neutralize the stomach acid. So that's its exocrine function, but its endocrine function is most well known is the production of insulin. And so they're showing you in this picture of a microscopic view of the pancreas that there's different cells that act as exocrine glands and some that act as endocrine glands. So the endocrine part of the pancreas secretes one of the hormones is insulin. And insulin is the only hormone that we make that lowers blood sugar. And there actually are a total of 3 enzymes that raise blood sugar. Or, I'm sorry, 3 hormones that raise blood sugar, but only one that lowers the blood sugar, which is why not inadequate amount of insulin is a really serious condition. Glucose homeostasis is really important for normal cell function. So if our glucose is too high or blood glucose is too low, it's going to influence the amount of insulin we make. And it's very important that it stays stable, that it's in a homeostatic level. There's lots of details about that here, but I just wanted to remind you that the condition that we know as diabetes mellitus is when our cells either don't make enough insulin or are not responding to enough insulin. So our blood glucose will be too high, and that can be a very serious life-threatening condition. So pancreas, endocrine, exocrine gland, and insulin and diabetes. So I think there's a couple questions down here that you should be able to answer. And I think I have question 1 and 2. So that's all I'm going to do with the endocrine system. It's just a really quick introduction that will get you ready to look at those virtual labs.